Welcome to Let's Write. I'm teacher Lindsay, and I am here creating an online writing class for anyone who's out of school right now and for any parents who are homeschooling because of the COVID-19 shutdown. There's no reason why kids have to stop learning just because they're out of the classroom. And so this is going to be a place where you can go to help your child work on his or her writing skills. If you're older, if you're in middle school, if you're in university, writing skills are even more important for you than for anyone else, especially as we start to do things more and more by distance. If you're in university, writing is essential. I'm sure I don't have to tell any university students that college is writing. So I want to talk to you today about something called a writer's notebook. Now, I'm taking some inspiration from some academic programs that a lot of different schools use. This is one source. This is called Right from the Start. I'm also taking a little bit of the writer's workshop from a very famous writing teacher named Caulkins and a famous author named Natalie Goldberg, who's known for her book, Writing Down the Bones, and my own personal experience. So I'll be sure and list all of that down below in the description, but I just want you to know I'm drawing on a few different sources as well as my own experience. So let's talk about writer's notebooks. What is a writer's notebook and why do you need one? A writer's notebook is literally any old notebook. This is a notebook you find at Walmart that you can steal from a friend's office. This is, something you have laying around the house that you forgot about not too long. If you're really, really into big notebooks, I'm making a mess in my office, like this one, you can go for it. You can get a giant notebook. You probably want to do this if your child is older or if you yourself are a more experienced writer. I don't recommend starting with this size. I recommend starting with the small size because that big one is just going to be a little intimidating. It's a lot of blank pages. This feels very doable. The goal is to fill this notebook a little bit each day. So how do we do that? How do we get inspired to write every single day? Well, it starts with decorating. So you want to find something that's nice and plain, not anything that's like covered in glitter or anything like that. Go for the boring, plain one. And my chair is sinking down right now. I'm just going to sink with it. There we go. Okay. So you want to find this nice plain notebook, and then you want to pull out old magazines, photos, maybe some old cartoons, anything like that, that has some cool images, maybe some cool text that you can glue onto the front or that your child can glue onto the front. If your kid's a bit younger and really into stickers, this is a great time to pull the stickers out. If they love, pom-poms, if they love glitter, go for it. Anything that your kid or that you yourself like, put it on the front and the back of the notebook. So I've already got my writer's notebook all decorated. All I did was I went into an old sketchbook and I found this old drawing I did. I went into an old journal and I ripped out a journal page and turned it upside down. Then I took another journal page, I cut a heart out. I found some old drawings I'd done, and I found this nice big colorful one that I did, and I just kind of layered it to get this cool kind of interdimensional look. Interdimensional? Three-dimensional? And that's all. All we're going to do is just decorate a notebook. So now we've gone from something very basic and every day to something personal and special. So this is step one to creating a space where we can be creative and we can express ourselves freely without any fear. So then what you're going to do is, if you're the parent, you're going to say to your child, okay, open to the first blank page. And on this page, I want you to write me a message. Now, I want you to be very clear with whomever the author is that only the two of you are going to read this notebook. This is not a place where they are going to be graded or evaluated in any way. This is where they are going to practice writing and practice being creative. To practice being creative means to allow our thoughts to just run wild Any weird thing that we think of writing down, we're free to write it down. We're not going to worry about spelling or punctuation. We're not going to worry about any of that stuff. This is a place to relieve stress. This is a place to wake up our right brain, our creative brain, and just leave logic aside for a little bit. Leave all of the difficulties of being at home all the time aside. We're just going to focus on enjoying our time with our writing. So we're going to write a message on this first page to mom or dad or, an aunt, an uncle, whomever is going to be reading it is going to get a letter on this first page. The letter can say anything the author wants. It can say, if you're reading this, go away. Or anyone who reads this is cursed for the next 500 years. I don't care. Any message that you want, but just write something to someone else. And parents, if you're making a notebook of your own, maybe you're going to do a little notebook swap with your child. Make sure that you address the reader directly. Okay? And then there's a reason you're going to do this, because it's the beginning of an exchange. You want to explain to your child, okay, every day I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to give you your notebook and a pen, and you're going to write until the timer goes off. You can write as much as you want, but you cannot put your pen down and you cannot stand up until the timer goes off. Why? As long as the pen is in our hand, and I have no pen in my hand. Let me get a pen. As long as the pen is in our hand, our brain knows that we need to be producing something. Now, if your child or if you are a very visual thinker, it's perfectly fine to add pictures to the text, but make sure that there is some text in there. The idea here is to put down our thoughts and to put down our ideas. Some of that can be visual, but it shouldn't be all visual. This is not a sketchbook. This should be a lined notebook. So some pictures, yes, just not 100%. All right, so how long are we going to write? That depends. If you are an author who is new to a writing practice, start with 5 minutes. See if you can write without stopping for 5 minutes. If you are someone who has a little more experience, you can go for 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. If you've been journaling your whole life, if you love to write and you know that this is something you're going to get a lot out of, go for an hour. You have to kind of know yourself and know the person who's writing. So how young can you start? You can actually start a writer's notebook with someone as young as 2. Now, a 2-year-old is going to do something like this. They're just going to grab a big crayon or a pen, and they're just going to scribble. They're just going to go onto the page. They're just going to go onto the page and just go, la, 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 la. I'm finished. Okay? That's fine. That's totally fine. At 2 years old, kids are just imitating big brother, big sister, mom, dad. They just want to participate. So just let them participate. That's fine. Because a 2-year-old can't read, you don't want to add a response to the bottom of this. Instead, you want to put a sticker, maybe draw a little smiley face, something like that. Just let them know that you've seen it and that you love it. If you can, sit with your young one and say, hey, tell me what this says, and see if he or she can communicate it verbally. Okay? Again, for a 2-year-old, 2 minutes of timed writing is going to be plenty, maybe even too much. So if they don't write until the timer goes off, don't be too strict about it. Now, if your child is between 3 and 5, you're going to get something like this. You might get like a little drawing and some letters. Some of them will probably be backwards. Okay? So here's that mix of text and pictures. This is really common for kids who are learning how to write and who are still finding ways to express their ideas. So at this phase, what they're going to do is they're going to try to tell you a story. So what you need to do is recognize the experimentation, recognize the organization, and the fact that they're practicing their letters. And you want to really reward that. Definitely write them a little note at the bottom, but you're going to have to read that note to them, because their reading skills are a little too low. Again, a sticker is great, a smiley face is great. Just make sure that you sit down with your author and say, hey, tell me about this. What's this? And they might say, oh, I wrote you a song right here. And it goes, da, ba, ba, I'm riding a horse, or something like that. And, go back to it the next day and say, hey, tell me that song again. It'll be different. But again, that's that experimentation. They're trying things out and seeing what works. That's very important for a developing young mind. All right, now, if you have an author between 6 and 12, you're going to start to get sentences. They might be a little rough, but you'll get some sentences and possibly a story. So again, parents, please do not use this as a time to evaluate or check. All we are doing here is building up creativity. This is not a spelling test. This is not a punctuation test. This is essentially a journal that they're sharing with you. Just like you wouldn't want someone grading your journal, they don't want someone grading theirs. This is their personal expression. So at this age, you can probably go for anywhere between a 5 and a 10-minute writing time. I find 12-year-olds can do a 10-minute writing time, no problem. And I like to do this in the morning with kids, but your kid might be different. Their schedule might be up in the air right now. Your mornings might be too busy. So just find a time that's good for everybody. And just set your cell phone down, set that timer, and again, tell them, okay, you're going to write until this timer goes off. And once that timer goes off, then you can stop. I'm going to take your journal, I'm going to read what you wrote, and I'm going to write you a response. Remember, that response is really important. They don't want to create in a vacuum. Most people don't. There's a very few people who like to make art in basements at 2 a.m. They're the minority. The majority of people like to create in a community. They like to get feedback. They like to bounce ideas off of each other. That's where a lot of creativity happens. That time in the basement at 2 a.m. is valuable as well, but it's especially at a young age, it's just so encouraging to have some sort of response to any creative effort. Okay, so if you have a kid between 13 and let's say early 20s, you might get some really serious stuff in this notebook. Again, I want to challenge you to withhold judgment, and I want you to give a very thoughtful response. So at this age, they're going to be looking for, did you really read my stuff? Okay, remember that early teen phase up into the 20s, there's this very strong sense of justice from these kids. They want to know that you are giving them your attention. They want to know that you understand what's fair. They want to know that you're hearing them. So here's my advice. If you're reading this just huge amount of writing, say your kid or you personally, say they went for 40 minutes of writing, they just couldn't stop. Great. What I want you to do is find 1 or 2 sentences that you loved. You can even put a little star next to them. And then in your response, you're going to say, oh, I loved the sentence about the smoke coming out of the chimney. I could almost choke on it a little bit. It was great. Then you're going to ask a question. You're going to say, so who was living in that house? Or why so much fire? Something like that. And you might get a response to that. You might not. Don't sweat it if you don't get a response. Just show your author that you're interested, that you're listening, and that you're reading. Okay, and that's going to encourage him or her to keep going. All right, so the idea here is to build up a writing practice every single day and to fill up this notebook. Again, we're starting with a small one so that it's not such an intimidating project to fill this notebook up. This is going to get filled up fairly quickly, and that's good. That's good. All right. So what happens with our writing practice if we put our timer down and we give our author his or her notebook and we say, okay, it's time to write, and they say, no, I'm not doing it. Creativity is fickle. We have to give it space. We can't really schedule times to be creative, but we can create room for creativity. So if, for example, you start scheduling writing time in the mornings and it goes really well for a week, maybe 2, fine, but be ready for that to go away. It might have to change to the afternoon. It might have to change to right before bed. It might have to change to, very late at night when everyone should be asleep, but nobody is. Whenever they feel like it's a good time, go ahead and give them that timer. You might need to be in the room. It might be better if you walk out. You have to just kind of feel it out. You have to think about what do I know about my child? What do I know about myself? And what do I know about what I need in order to really focus, or what does my child really need to focus? And just keep that in mind as you go along. So if you make a writer's notebook, please send me a picture. You can find me on Facebook at LIMA Homework Help. That's Lima Homework Help. And I run a small business there with my partner where we are offering online learning services to kids who are currently out of school. So I will be back here with more about what you can do with your writer's notebook and how you can build up a writing practice very soon. All right, take it easy and be in touch. I love you all. Mwah.